Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. I'm Ismawati. I'm going to communication ethnography. Communication ethnography is a study of the communication patterns of a cultural community. In macro terms, this study is part of ethnography. Ethnography of communication is development of ethnography of language, which was proposed by Dilheims in 1962. The ethnographic study of communication is aimed at studying the role of language in the communicative behavior of a society, namely regarding the ways in which language is used in societies of different cultures. In this development, Himes changed it from ethnography of speaking to ethnography of communication because the frame of reference used was not in language but in communication. Language has no meaning without being communicated. Dilheims, as the originator of the ethnography theory of communication, is not a linguistic study but ethnographic study, and it is not about language but about communication. I think that's all for me. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Melati. I am from Group 1. I am as the second speaker. I will continue to explain about ethnography. What is ethnography? Ethnography from Greek ethnos, folk, people, and graph to write. It means that ethnography is a field or of study which is considered primarily with the description and analysis of culture, and linguistic is the field considered, among other things, the description and analysis of language codes. In addition, ethnographic science are qualitative research procedure of describing, analyzing, and interpreting a culture sharing group shared pattern of behavior, beliefs, and language that develop over time. And next, the purpose of ethnography. The purpose of uh, ethnography is to release the goal of anthropology, which is to understand humans by studying society and its culture in ethnographic settings. An ethnographic framework is an arrangement of cultural elements according to a standardized order. I think that's all for me. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
My name is Rahmawati. I will explain about varieties of talking. Ada beberapa peneliti di bidang etnografi yang membahas tentang varietas bahasa, yaitu number 1, Marshall 1961 years, number 2, Basso 1972 years, number 3, Fox 1974 years, number 4, Reisman 1970 years, and number 5, Frey 1964 years. Instruktif ini adalah untuk melihat beberapa cara di mana berbagai orang di dunia menggunakan pembicaraan dan kadang-kadang tidak adanya pembicaraan atau keinginan untuk berkomunikasi. Marshall 1961 years has indicated how the Kung have certain costume which help them either to avoid or reduce friction and hostility within bands and between bands. Menurut Marshall, pidato di antara Kung membantu menjaga hubungan sosial yang damai dengan memungkinkan orang untuk tetap berhubungan satu sama lain tentang cara berpikir dan perasaan mereka. Dan Baso, 1972 years, Apache Barat di Timur Tengah Arizona choose to be silent when there is a strong possibility that such uncertainty exists. Mereka diam saat bertemu orang asing. Mereka harus mengetahui apakah orang asing ini adalah sesama Apache Barat atau orang luar sama sekali. Jika mereka adalah orang asing, maka mereka diharapkan untuk diam juga. Because Western apathy will consider this salty man his enemy. I think this all for me.
Well, I would like to continue the explanation from my partner before that talked about varieties of talking from Marshall and Deso, and now I would like to talk about varieties of talking from Fox, Brisman, and Frege. First is based on Fox. Fox has described how to the body consider talk one of the great pleasures of life, not just idle chatter, but disputing, arguing, showing of various verbal skills, and, in general, indulging in verbal activity. Silence is interpreted as a sign of some kind of distress, possibly confusion or dejection, so social encounters or talk failed. Jadi menurut Fox di sini adalah dia mengatakan bagaimana Roth menganggap berbicara sebagai salah satu kesenangan terbesar di dalam hidup. Bukan hanya sekedar basa-basi atau omong kosong, namun dapat juga memiliki makna tertentu dari suatu pembicaraan itu, atau mereka bisa dalam rangka memamerkan keterampilan verbal, dan secara umum mereka dalam suatu pembicaraan itu mereka dapat mewakili aktivitas verbal. Jadi inti dari perkataan pause adalah pembicaraan merupakan inti dari suatu pertemuan. Kemudian next is from Raisman 1974. In Antigua, people speak because they must assert themselves through language. They do not consider as interruptions behavior that we would consider being either interruptive or even disruptive. Raisman says that in Antigua, to enter a conversation, one must assert one's presence rather than participate in something formalized as an exchange. Jadi menurut Raisman adalah dia mengatakan orang berbicara karena mereka harus menegaskan diri mereka melalui bahasa. Intrusi di sini dianggap sebagai sesuatu yang bahkan mengganggu. Raisman mengatakan bahwa Antigua untuk memasuki percakapan seseorang harus menegaskan kehadirannya daripada berpartisipasi dalam suatu yang diformalkan sebagai pertukaran. Intinya di sini adalah bagaimana seseorang mempertegas keberadaan mereka dalam suatu pembicaraan melalui bahasa. Jadi seseorang harus mampu memperlihatkan diri mereka melalui bahasa mereka sendiri. Next is from Freik, 1964, Subanon of the Philippines, who employs certain kinds of speech in drinking encounters. Such encounters are very important for gaining prestige for resolving disputes. Freik has described how to talk, what he calls drinking talk. Process in such encounters from the initial invitation to partake of drink, to the selection of proper topics for discussion as drink process competitively, and finally to displays of verbal art that accompany heavy, successful drinking. Jadi menurut Freud di sini adalah seseorang yang menggunakan beberapa jenis tutur kata atau bahasa diungkapkan melalui pertemuan minum. Dia menyebutnya bagaimana seseorang mengungkapkan pembicaraan, apa yang mereka ingin katakan itu disebut sebagai pembicaraan sambil minum. Jadi mungkin kalau di anak-anak sekarang kata yang berlaku itu seperti ngopi. Nah, dalam ngopi ini pertemuan ini akan membahas atau bertujuan untuk membahas suatu topik atau masalah tertentu yang penting untuk dibahas. Jadi bukan hanya sekedar berbicara sambil minum, tetapi terdapat suatu makna, terdapat suatu pembahasan yang perlu dibicarakan dalam suatu pertemuan tersebut. Nah, pada akhirnya dalam pertemuan ini seseorang akan menampilkan seni verbal mereka atau mendeliver apa yang mereka ingin katakan. Dan kemudian dibahas dengan baik. Okay, I think that's all for me. Thank you.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Astia Stuti from Group 1, and now I would like to continue the material from my partner. Okay, the first is procedure for speaking or tata cara bertutur. Speaking procedure are the rules that are carried out by speaker and listener when communicating related to habit or customs. For example, first, a child talking to parents must pay attention to the age of the speaker. The second, the listener must not interrupt the speaker before the speaker has actually finished speaking. And next, tradition in a Japanese family environment, young children who are involved in conversation with their parents should not just interrupt their parents' speech without the permission of the parents, without being asked to speak. Even if the child has the opportunity because there is time, he usually begins his utterance while asking permission by saying "Nuwun sewu," apologizing for 1,000 apologies. Thus, the manner of speaking differs between one community group and another. The next is Guyup Tutur or Guyup Said. Speech Guyup is a community or group of people who live and interact with each other in a certain area using a particular language. Speech society is not only a group of people in a certain culture who use language as an aid of communication, but also have language rules in a one language variation. And the next, there is according to expert, the first is Hudson 1918 argues that the term speech community refers to a language-based community, which is often confused with the term linguistic community. And the second is John Lyons 1917 argues the 1970 speech community is all the people who use a given language or dialect. A speech community is all people who speak a particular language or dialect. I think that's all for me, and thank you.
Okay, it's me, Muhammad Akbar Ruhan, and here I would like to explain about situation, speech components, and video behind speech of ethnography or speaking. So the first, speech situation. What is speech situation? Speech situation is a condition when you speak. For example, when you speak in front of 1,000 people, when you be a leader of demonstrate convoy or something like that, is exactly different when you in ceremony situation and wedding situation is exactly different. Okay, next, speech components. You can memorize these speech components by the abbreviation of the word speaking. SPEAKENG. Okay. S, situation or scene. Situation here is where and when you speak. Kapan dan di mana kamu bertutur. Kemudian P is participant. Participant is not just audience, receiver, or something like that, but the speaker and addresser too is participant. And next is E or ends. Ends is a purpose your speech. And then next is A. A is mean the eight sequence. X sequence is bentuk dan isi pesannya apa, begitu. Next, K, speak. K is key, kunci. What the meaning of key? Key is how do you speak? Even you use a rise voice or slow voice, it's depend on situation. Next is I. It mean instrument. Instrument is just like a media when you speak. For example, by lukisan, by tulisan or vokal, something like that. Next is N, norma, and the last is G, genre. Genre is seperti ketika kalian membaca puisi gitu. Khutbah, apakah kalian sedang melawak atau di perkuliahan dan sebagainya, itu genre. And then there are 6 components of speech in decreasing by Himes, but actually it's similar with the abbreviation of the word speaking. But if you want a more detailed information about components of speech, you can see these 16 components. Maybe I will not explain about this, but if you have a question or you didn't understand, you can ask me. Okay, next, value behind speech. Behind the speech, there are socio-cultural values. This means that by looking at the speech of a person or a group of people, we can determine or at least guess and can identify who that person is, from which group he is, the social meaning of the speech, values, teaching, views of life, and so on. I think that's all. Thank you very much for me. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.